welcome back to another episode of Meet the Creatives. Today I am joined by Leslie Witt, the Chief Design Officer at one of my favorite companies in the world, at Headspace. Welcome to Meet the Creatives. I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, this is awesome. I was saying before the show that I'm a huge fan of Headspace. I'll get into that in a second, but I originally talked to Ken Sino in the written form, and we've stayed in touch that way. I told you before the show about how I tried to make a Hail Mary attempt to talk to Andy, but he had just got done doing Jimmy Fallon. One day, a boy can dream. Andy, if you're out there.
He told me to say next up.
Yes, exactly. In the future. That's like a long-term goal. Well, I'm taking the Fear of the Future class with Eve from Headspace. So maybe I'm fearful of the future. Maybe it work out.
Well, little known fact, Eve, who is our director of meditation and also the voice that puts many, many people around the world to sleep,
Yes.
is on the design team. So
Really?
she is originally a content designer, and
That's
I'm
so
still very
cool.
lucky to get to call her part of our community and crew.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Shout out to Eve. That's like really
Yeah.
cool. I feel like sometimes you kind of lose sight of the fact that they're just people. They kind of, because every day, for the most part, on most good days, I start the day out with Headspace. So a little backspace. I have Headspace in my head. A little backstory on how I came around to Headspace. And not to be too depressing, but it'll give some context as to why I have such an affinity for it. And then we'll get into you.
Yeah.
I swear to God, this is so self-serving, but I just want to tell you while we're here. My brother-in-law unfortunately passed away like 2.5 years ago, and I at the time really wasn't focusing on my mental health at all. I wasn't doing therapy. We did some stuff where they would like come in and talk to us, and that kind of got the ball rolling, but nothing really. And I since now actually this week was 1 year sober, but at the time I like definitely was having
Wow.
problems with like drugs and
Yeah.
alcohol and everything,
Yeah.
and I just needed something, a lifeboat, anything, just a moment of clarity. And I remember when I found Headspace, and I remember this is like, and initially I was like, this is the most woo woo thing I've ever done in my entire life. This is not going to work. And I cannot begin to express to you how grateful I am to Headspace and the product that it is. And it's really gotten me through so many hard times. And then like recently my grandpa passed away. It's been a rough couple years.
Yeah.
But I took the grief courses on Headspace have been really great. And then with my career, I've, the self-esteem course and all this different stuff. So this is a ringing endorsement of Headspace. And, I know we're joking around here, but if anyone is struggling, I can't recommend it enough. So, that's cool.
Rob, thank you for sharing that so openly. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that level of personal trauma, no matter like what its origin story is, a loss of a loved one. In my case, it was multiple years of miscarriages and infertility. Like that
Sorry to hear that.
impetus to finally say, like, I actually need to acknowledge my mental health and take care of it, is often what brings people to us. And I'd say, like, as a design leader, our biggest goal is to be able to get you over that hump of like, this is the woo-wooest thing that I've ever done, and like, I don't think it's right for me, to be able to actually
the tiny pinprick of light was like,
yeah,
what?
like, how do you actually start that conversation and match make with the right situational content, the right voice, even to make sure that the person feels welcomed in and like
Mm-hmm.
has that glide path to create more of a lifelong mental health care.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's sort of an optimism, and I think that it's. I guess we'll just dive right into all things
Yeah.
Headspace, and I know I have it on the questions about what a typical day is like, but just about the design system in general. There's definitely like an optimism there,
Yeah.
and fun playfulness about it that seems kind of genuine, I'd say. Sometimes you see things and
Yeah.
it seems but you could kind of there's like an angle, whereas Headspace for some reason feels organic. Maybe I'm just like used to it, but it's one of the few brands that if I would have a meltdown if they completely change it and just like did away with the characters. I hope that's not something that's coming down the pipeline. I actually have on Adobe. There's Adobe Color. You can like download the swatches.
Yeah.
This is really embarrassing, but I have all of the Headspace color palettes. They're all saved. And when I was like getting into like vector art, I would make the little characters. So I actually
Well,
have
I
them
mean, I
saved
will
somewhere.
tell you what is probably not that surprising, which is like we have some of the world's best illustrators and visual designers on the team
Yeah.
who are, always pushing to bring that authenticity, that invitation and accessibility of our illustration system and our UI system to bear. It heavily predates my tenure with Headspace. And I would say, like, as someone stepping into the chief design officer role, like, my goal is to make sure that we can evolve it into something that's that much more inviting and accessible, and delivers on our mission, which is, to improve the health and happiness of the world in a way that feels authentic to more and more people, but to do it without compromising the jewel that it is today.
I think that great design, I was just talking about this the other day. I was talking about animation, and I was saying that I wanted to get into animation, and then I tried to draw Mickey Mouse, just like the static, like, just draw Mickey Mouse, just sketch him out on, like, pencil and paper, see if I could do it. And it was such a humbling experience. And when I tried to replicate the Headspace stuff, because it's really easy to, I could do that. I can make those like rounded corners and do that sort of like organic shapes and stuff like that. But the conceptual side of Headspace from a design standpoint, I find to be really, really, it's so simple, but it's also like brilliant at the same time. Like,
well, I will pass on your appreciation and thanks to the team. In particular, my chief creative officer, Caroline Pei, who helps to steward that incredible crew in creating something that has the level of kind of meaning and diversity that speaks to the broad range of both people we serve and content that we serve up, but has that holism where you can just at a blink tell that it's Headspace.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I'm curious to know, you're a chief design officer, there's chief creative officer.
Yeah.
And Headspace is a huge, a very quickly growing company. I'm sure, like, by the day it's probably growing. So, there's the chief creative officer and chief design officer. There's design and creative. How do those two intermingle, and what is the difference? I know it's kind of a probably a dumb question, but.
So design is sort of the meta umbrella. And so within my team sits the creative team that Caroline Pei, who I just mentioned, leads. And that's, brand and creative, it's copywriting, it's illustration and animation. So it's really kind of from the very first impression when you see Headspace on a YouTube channel or a Netflix show like that very first hint of introduction, all the way through, kind of promise to pay off when you're actually in our experiences and acting as a member. They're really responsible for that through line. I've got the product design team, which your friend Ken Sino leads. Yeah, shout out to Ken. And those are the folks that really, once we have more of a kind of interest and engagement with you from a product perspective, they're really responsible for delivering delightful and highly usable features to bear. We've got a user research team, and that's both service designers as well as qual and quant researchers who kind of hold the candle for our members, and having a deep human understanding of need on everything from the tactical to like the very conceptual, really understanding the dire state of mental health in the world and translating that into future product and service ideas. And then, last but not least, we have a corporate social responsibility that lives with the design team. And we have a strong social impact goal and focus around teen and youth mental health. And so that's really the kind of cast of characters that lives within the design umbrella, having us be able to advocate for people and really drive a human-centered design process on everything from innovation and ideation through execution.
And Headspace is really intuitive. I don't think that you need to be somebody who's very tech savvy in order to use it.
That's definitely our goal.
Yeah.
I would say like all parties, there's always room for improvement. And that's for us been particularly the case as we have expanded the type of content and material we bring to bear. We started as a meditation and mindfulness app, and that's very much still our foundation, but we have a really wide array of sleep content, of focus music, of things that are about kind of wellness writ large in terms of mindful exercise, mindful eating. And as that library of offerings expands, you don't want to then expand, and it can without watching it, the complexity of navigating to discovery. So we're really leaning in right now to kind of use all of the complex tools of AI and ML to be able to personalize those things and make sure that that matchmaking process isn't one that has all of the burden on the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I love about Headspace is well, first off, I love the jazz. I forgot what the word is, but the coffee jazz club thing.
Mm-hmm.
I live there.
Oh, good.
The place where with the cats with the washing machines.
Oh,
What's
yes.
that called? The cat.
That's the Cat Marina. That's not Cat Marina.
The Cat Marina is good too.
Cat Marina is good.
Miley Cyrus loves that, by the way. I don't know if you heard that.
I've heard that. I had heard that. That one's not my favorite. I'm a little bit, to be honest, I have 9-year-old twins, and my son has an odd level of obsession with Sesame Street. And so we're big fans of the monster meditations, and a little bit of the like Goodnight Elmo, which he even acknowledges. He's like, I know it's not age appropriate, but I'd like to do Goodnight Elmo again.
That sounds really fun. I'm going to do it. For the podcast, I think it was like 2 years ago, I had an interview with Sarah Rebar, who's an incredible illustrator. You guys should totally snag her at Headspace. She's incredible. She's worked. I think she's back now at Sesame Street. But right before the podcast, I got lost and didn't know where the building was. It's kind of hidden, probably because they don't want like people showing up or whatever. So I stopped some man on the street and I was like, "Excuse me, can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street?" He's like, "You realize what you just said, right?" I'm like, oh yeah, no, sorry. But thankfully he knew, so he saved me the secondhand embarrassment. So it was good though.
Well, yes. Follow on story to that. So my son is really obsessed with the idea of being on Sesame Street. He just wrote a research paper on puppeteering. He last summer taught himself ventriloquism. I'm not sure he would, pass a talent test, but he told me this weekend that the one place he wants to go now that like we're kind of starting to travel again post-COVID, he's got to get to New York because he wants to go to Sesame Street. So
that's amazing. I could
we
definitely
might have to ask you for directions.
Yes. Yeah. You're going to introduce me to Eve and I'm going to get you to go to Sesame Street. It's going to be perfect.
It's a deal. It's a deal.
Cool. Yeah. No, see, my friend works there. I went to the other one, but the studio, we were planning on going. I'm sure with COVID, the rules are really strict, but I would definitely make that happen. Obviously, we're talking about the app and how it's expanding, but I think that Headspace is now in all these different places. It's on like Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. More recently, you guys are on Netflix. I love it. I'm really into it. My wife and I watched it. But, as far as what you guys are doing in the future and some of the projects you guys are excited about, what are you the most excited about?
We have something that we'll be sharing with the world very soon, another partnership with Sesame Street, which is probably one of the things I am most excited about. We, are continuing to partner with Netflix. And I think by the time that you have this live, we will have announced the fact that we have an interactive show coming up with Netflix. So they are kind of figuring out how to get more into the interactive space, and we're partnering up with them to bring more of our meditation and sleep content into that platform because it allows us to reach worldwide. I think God, the stats are astounding, but in the tens of millions of people who have been able to view and benefit from Headspace content through Netflix.
I was going to ask about that. Was there an exponential growth in the company once it went to Netflix, or?
Yeah. And particularly when you think about reach, when you think about brand knownness, and really kind of then driving that back into the core business. We continue to see that our overall mission, which is to reach the world, is something that we have to and want to do vis-a-vis partners in addition to our own service. So there's a lot that's coming up very soon.
I am hyped. I am ready.
Yeah. Yeah. And in addition, I would say probably the thing that I'm most excited about is we're continuing to lean into becoming this kind of broader service mental health and well-being platform, and really acknowledging that anxiety, stress, depression, whatever set of challenges someone's facing, whether they're kind of one moment in time or something that's defining a long-term journey for them, that we have the right range of content and services to meet them no matter where they are.
So the purpose of this podcast is to bridge the gap between entry-level creative professionals, people just starting out, and people like yourself who are crushing it. If someone wanted to apply for Headspace, what are some of the things that you're looking to see to come work with you? And what are some of the things that you might see or see time and time again that may prove that someone's, not cut out for the job?
Great question. I'm going to answer your question first, and then I actually want to do a little self-reflection on career journeys, if you don't mind.
We're going to go deep. I love it. This is perfect.
Okay, good. When it comes to what we're looking for, we have an incredible benefit that we have a very strong talent attraction brand. Mm-hmm. So, what that means in translation is more people who are qualified to have the positions that we post apply to them than anyone has a right to see. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that doesn't mean don't apply, but it does mean like, wow, you're applying with a really large volume of incredibly like technically talented people. And so, first of all, I would say, especially for, some of our more technical oriented jobs and roles, like say, a design prototyper, an illustrator, an animator, we are looking like, do you have proof points that say that you are world-class in this from a kind of, the long arm of the T dimension. But if you're familiar with that metaphor of a T-shaped individual, it was a big one that we looked for when I was at IDEO for 10 years. And I definitely have carried that.
I actually know Elliot Burford, and he told me about the I think he worked at IDEO as well. And it's a capital T. It's a broad skill set going across the top, and then the bottom is the deep dive, right?
Yeah, and what I've always found is that that dimension of the broad skill set is also about the ability to translate and communicate effectively, the why behind what you're doing, as well as have a curiosity about others' whys, right? And so when it comes to being able to collaborate, you can represent your point of view, but you can also be receptive to others. When it comes to, having a strong intuition, you can represent your why and advocate. You can also be open to experimentation. And so that level of kind of openness, as well as ability to translate, is something that we deeply look for. Attitude and passion is huge. And that doesn't necessarily mean that like you are a meditation guru, right? Like I'm not. I'm a learner. And I think that dimension of, for me, being a learner gives me more empathy with our members. And so, but having deep passion for the topic and a zeal to use the tools of design to change the world, if that's not too cheesy, is something that we definitely look for in candidates. And then last but not least is really energy, right? Like when you think about, especially I'd say these days when we're all connecting to each other over Zoom and via screen, are you someone that can enter into a conversation, into a community, into a place? And if you're given the forum, empowered to speak in an equitable environment that's inclusive in nature, like, do you take that opportunity and run with it, where you're able to act as an amplifier to the possibility and energy of the room for others?
Yeah. So you're telling me there's a chance. No, it's cool. I have the energy part. The technical skill set, though. I'll see it in 5 years.
You might need to work on the long T, but
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so tell me about the career journey part.
Yeah, I mean, so if you looked me up on LinkedIn, you can tell I didn't start out as a product designer. I started out as an architect. And I spent like 10 years being an architect of the build buildings kind. Loved being educated as an architect, hated practicing as an architect. I mean, like that sounds like a strong verb, but it accurately portrays how I felt when I actually allowed myself to reflect and feel like, do I enjoy doing this? And that was pretty soul crushing for me. Because I had not just an orientation of like, I go to Rice, I go to Princeton, but it was all about becoming a professor of architecture who had a small boutique practice. And what I realized was I had this massive crisis of conscience where I was like, I can't go be a professor of something that I don't actually enjoy doing. And I had, just this moment in time that it was in my very late 20s. And it was through complete serendipity that I left that moment and stumbled into IDEO, where I also was not a product designer, and sort of found through being forced into various different types of industries and projects and having doors opened and also forcing doors open that I started to lock in on what I really enjoyed doing as a designer. And, I'm hopefully this isn't going to spark any ageism. I'm 44 years old, and it's just 6 months ago that I found Headspace. And I say that not to like downplay all the other wonderful things that have happened throughout my career.
Don't look a day over 30, by the way, just so that
thank you. Thank you.
People are gonna be listening like, hello, like.
But I do think a lot of times it felt this way to me. Like you're 22, you're 24, and you're like, I haven't yet worked for the most major brand that is on my like utopia list, or I don't feel like I've totally locked and loaded. And I would tell you, even if you get your quote unquote dream job right out of college, you're inevitably going to find things that are disappointing about that dream or didn't live up to expectations. And hopefully you give yourself enough oxygen to allow that there's other paths and other discoveries that can happen.
Yeah.
So that was my little stump speech.
No, it's perfect. I love it. And I'm kind of there right now, actually, because I just turned 30 on April 4th. And it's weird because there is a sense of calm, actually, that's come with that. Like my 20s, as I mentioned earlier, the last 5 years or so, I was kind of happy to come into 30 and kind of have that new slate. Also, too, I think the older I get, the more I realize that my parents are just human beings who want what's best for me, and there's not this like constant, there's not this constant judgment from people. That a lot of that was self-constructed, a lot of which I uncovered in Headspace. But now it's like, oh, okay, well, no one's judging you, but you need to have like a viable career. And I'm also I was just saying to my wife today, I was eating a burrito on the side of the road and just looking around at like downtown Ridgewood, New Jersey, which is a very affluent area. By the way, first time using that word. I'm pretty sure that's how you use that word. And I was looking around, and recently I've been kind of recognizing it's like, oh yeah, real life costs a lot of money. Yeah. Like property tax is a lot. Having children is a lot. That's something that's very much so and coming up in my life. So it's cool that I'm like, oh great, like I get to do what I love. But there's also that feeling of like, like the walls are closing in kind of thing. That's why I'm doing all this.
And I mean, like, this is going to sound cheesy, but I think like the goal is to be able to marry them.
Right.
But I think that also takes some navigation. And what I mean by that is like, actually like, I'll point right there. My husband went to Wesleyan, which is, like a lovely liberal arts school. And he was a studio art and African-American studies major. And he did tons of printmaking. He loves printmaking. I mean, that was his thesis. We have like amazing prints all throughout our house. We have a little letterpress in our home that makes holiday cards every Christmas.
You guys are so California. I love it.
We are kind of California.
You're making me miss the West Coast.
We're sort of thinking he is also a design leader in digital. And gets to use some of the same thought processes and some of the same bias to make digital things, which he loves, but don't have necessarily that same visceral, like, oh my God, like this is my core. But we're seeing the road where, more time for hobbies emerges, that glide path of, making a career that does give you the ability to have kids, to pay those property taxes, to support, elderly parents,
right.
That they're not mutually exclusive, and that life has so many chapters, and that we're starting to see that moment where you start to come back and revisit. Like I've taken up piano again. I got my trumpet, which I haven't really played since college, like lubed up, and like I'm thinking about joining a band. And you're like, okay, like I gave it up for a while, but I can come back. So it's a nice life's a journey reality.
Over the last year and a half or so with COVID and everything, this podcast is definitely changing for the better in a way. At first I was a little bit worried that it would seem self-serving, but I think especially with all like the social distancing and like in the literal sense, I think that people want to hear more genuine, vulnerable things. Do you feel like, as somebody who's like in a leadership position, do you feel that people during this time are now like opening up more about these things? Because lately I feel like I'm being a little bit too dramatic about things, but then I think it's also sign of the times sort of thing, Yeah,
I think that, it's like to everything has a silver lining, and when I look at what was already, like, I'm going to zoom in on our domain because I think it's very apropos. What already was a mental health crisis, but still had a lot of stigma wrapped around it. Like you go through an event, an extended event together, like the global pandemic, and whether it's personal trauma or, you know, adjacent trauma, whether it's, you know, having illness or watching someone have illness or fear of your parents getting sick, you know, I mean, you extrapolate, no one's more than a small tick removed from something that's substantial and hard, and knows that that is a shared attribute. And I think it's created in a positive way the conditions for people to talk pretty openly about their mental health. And then you double into that a reality, at least in the US and to a certain extent worldwide, which is the level of social upheaval, which, you know, you have like this fomenting of things that have been there latently for so long. And again, it's created like it's in your face and now in good ways is being talked about, but we don't necessarily all have the right words, the right resources within ourselves to kind of self-reflect and reflect feelings, reflect institutional reality. And so I've just seen this massive increase in willingness to talk about hard things, as well as almost a demand of it, which to me, like those are all good, particularly if we can marry that new reality with the resources to actually help people.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's why. And admittedly, I think I kind of came back to Headspace during the time of the pandemic because I before this, I would think of self-care sort of as this, I don't want to say like a luxury, but it felt like, why are you taking time for yourself and going, this is before COVID. Why are you on a Monday at a park doing meditation when surely you could be doing something else to further your career? And now it's like those two worlds are starting to flip-flop a little bit for me. The mental health, the health and well-being of my family, is everyone alive? Is everybody good? Cool. Like, have gratitude for that. It's sort of a sense of gratitude has sort of been like forced upon me. Having a sense of inner peace during times like this is really helpful. The more things I have in my pocket, literally, that can help with that, the better, you know?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it made me think a little bit like, I do believe that these affiliations are being broken, right? Where self-care was somewhat synonymous with selfish and indulgent.
Right.
And that instead you're like remapping now to, you know, the safety video we've all seen a million times when we used to fly on planes, which is, you know, put on your own oxygen mask before you don it on your children. Because guess what? Like, if you don't do that, you can't actually be there to help them. And and I do feel like that, you know, that's a very literal association, but that notion of like, and we all have seen it, like if you haven't taken care of yourself and gotten yourself to you know, at least a stable place, you end up being a nag on others, right? Like, and you see it in personal relationships, you see it in larger group gatherings. And so that dimension of like, actually, in order to be someone who's self-accretive and is helpful, I actually need to establish a baseline of self-care for me.
Yeah, absolutely. In a way, I'm kind of, not that I'm it's a weird thing to say. I'm glad that my life spiraled out of control, but my brother-in-law passed, and my grandpa was diagnosed with cancer, then he died, and that all kind of happened in short order. And then COVID came along, and I was already sort of like, I got to get this under control. And that's when, and I know I'm not technically supposed to talk about it, but you know, when I went into like 12-step recovery, like it happened, I got sober May 14th of last year. And I remember that feeling of just recognizing like, this isn't good. Like whatever's happening in the world and where my mental state is at now, this isn't good. But I actually have a lot of empathy for people who just now as we're coming out of this, are looking at what has transpired and where their mental health is, and have a huge mountain to climb, because I think we all do. And if I'm not taking care of myself, and I can feel the difference, and I want to, I think it's imperative that I'm more open about these kind of things. It's not selfish to talk about these things. In fact, it's needed for a lot of people to hear.
Oh, totally. No, I think
they see me as like the
it
big happy
normalizes,
podcast guy, you know?
Yeah, like it
I'm not.
normalizes a reality that many people are in. And for those who haven't yet necessarily like addressed something like, you know, sobriety, if that's their challenge, like you just opened the door for, you know, some level of, you know, listeners to your podcast. So like,
Yeah.
I would highly encourage you to keep talking. And also, you know, massive congrats on hitting a 1-year milestone.
Well,
That's
thank
really
you
meaningful.
so much. It's pretty cool to be here with the Headspace lady during my 1-year sobriety. I made it. I think no, it's been good, and I'm really grateful and have a great network of people. And honestly, not to keep harping on this, but the Headspace really was, you know, I in a way, I'm like, I almost get like emotional talking about it, and it's kind of you know, my therapist always says. I've really been hitting it hard with the therapy and everything. My therapist always says, you know, is it odd or is it God kind of thing. And I have that a little bit right now with like the Headspace, like even just us talking here, it's really special because it's like, this was sort of the sea. I remember it's actually right outside here. There's a lake behind my house and there's a bench. And I remember the day I was just like, there was that sense of hope that the tiny pinprick of light. I love it.
Well, I can say for the whole team, like when we hear from people that the services and content that we've brought to life has been helpful, it's like extraordinarily fulfilling. That's the reason everybody's shows up.
Yeah. It's in a major way too, for real. I mean, I don't know where I was going. I you know, it's a scary thing to say, and my mom's not gonna like hearing this or whatever, but you know, it was really dark and I wasn't exactly sure. Just, you know, that's sort of how I ended up getting to that place. Cause like, how dark is this gonna go? And all of a sudden some random cool guy with an accent just comes along on some pod. So it's good. And now my relationship with Headspace is a little bit more fun. We do the cat marina and all that stuff. So
oh, good.
Well,
you know, and that's our intent, is to be able to, you know, if life throws you a curveball, we want to be able to, you know, kind of flex up with you and be able to be there to support, as well as like have those kind of rituals and routines that just make for a healthy, happy mind, and to not see that those two things are at like antipodes to each other, but that they're actually part of anyone's lived life.
Yeah, the full spectrum is there. Now I'm on like Kevin Hart TikTok, you know what I'm saying? I'm on like I'm on that John Legend, you know, where I'm trying to think of who some of the other ones are. But after this, I'm going to Sesame Street.
Yeah, good, good. The Sesame Street, you got to like get some consult from Elmo. He always brings a light mood and a lot of empathy.
That's so perfect. Well, this has been so much fun. I hope that we covered everything. Is there anything that you wanted to throw in there? I know it's been all over the place, but this has been a ringing endorsement for Headspace.
I wanted to thank you for both the conversation, as well as being such a like devoted member, and just share back that it's incredibly personally fulfilling to hear that we've been able to help.
Where can people find you online? What's the best place to get in touch if people want to work at Headspace, all that jazz? This is shameless self-promotion time.
Wonderful. Well, LinkedIn is probably the easiest place to find me, particularly if you're interested in all things professional and design. So Leslie Witt, I'm the Chief Design Officer at Headspace. Drop me a line.
All right. Well, this has been fun. I think we just
wonderful to meet you.
I think we became best friends. One day I'm going to come work for you. I'm going to get my shit together.
Do it.
I'm waiting for my wife to become sick. She just got tenure, but I know that over time she's going to get sick of teaching, and she's going to want to spend more time with the kids. And then I'm going to go over to San Francisco and get the Headspace bag.
I love it. Well,
Take care.
Nice.